Hey friends, this is Dixon Kavanaugh, and welcome to another episode of Outloud with Dixon, where we will explore wisdom, get creative, and better appreciate this fun, chaotic, and beautiful world that we live in. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for joining us for today's episode. Whether this is your introduction to the podcast, or you've been with me since episode 1, I'm grateful to get to share these stories and ideas with you. Now let's get to it. Prepare to be enchanted, for today's reading is unique and very special to me. It is intriguing and suspenseful, and is one of my favorite novels of all time. It's an adventure story, a spiritual odyssey following the path of a young man named Siddhartha. To provide context for the passage today, Siddhartha was raised in the lap of luxury, as a prince, the son of a high-ranked Brahmin priest. But despite all the pleasure and comfort of his life, he is unfulfilled. So he decides to leave his cushy life and become a samana, a wandering ascetic who lives in the forest and spends their days fasting and meditating so as to rid themselves of worldly desires and commune with the soul of the universe. After living and learning in the forest from these elder samanas for 3 years, Siddhartha pokes his head up and once again asks, "Is this all there is?" He takes a careful look around at his teachers and asks, "Do they have what I want? Are they any closer to the goal of enlightenment?" Coming to an answer, he gets up and decides to leave once again. And what does he do? Well, he finds a new teacher, of course. But this time, the situation is different. Siddhartha is different. I won't reveal all of it right now, but I will give you a hint so that your ears perk up at the right moment. I'll serve you up a sort of appetizer to give you a taste for what is to come. Our main character, our hero, our protagonist, our curious friend Siddhartha is choosing to bet on himself. He's seeing the limits of only learning from other people's experience. He's realizing that to really reach his goal, he's going to have to take a deeper dive into his own personal experience. And as we get into the reading, you might find yourself asking, "Hold up. Wait a minute, isn't this entire podcast about reading books? Isn't it solely about learning from others?" Because this Siddhartha guy seems to be saying that whole endeavor is a load of crap. And I've got to be careful here. Is this Siddhartha guy running me out of a job? I mean, I'm just getting started. And as chance will have it, the answer to your question is no. This podcast is not just about reading books, and it's not entirely about learning from others. Our real purpose is to help recognize our existence as fully developed, compassionate human beings. And for this episode in particular, it is growing our self-reliance and attitude of curiosity. We want to become investigators, in the same way Siddhartha does, curiously peering into the orb of our life, calmly, and I dare say playfully, assessing what it is that inspires us, what brings us joy, and how we can help germinate these same emotions in others. So gather around and listen close, and join me as we journey into the mysterious world of Siddhartha. Quote Siddhartha, "One thing, O most venerable one, I have admired in your teachings most of all. Everything in your teachings is perfectly clear, is proven. You are presenting the world as a perfect chain, a chain which is never and nowhere broken, an eternal chain, the links of which are causes and effects. Never before has this been seen so clearly. Never before has this been presented so irrefutably. Truly, the heart of every Brahmin has to beat stronger with love once he has seen the world through your teachings, perfectly connected, without gaps, clear as a crystal, not depending on chance and not depending on gods. Whether it may be good or bad, whether living according to it would be suffering or joy, I do not wish to discuss. Possibly, this is not essential, but the uniformity of the world, that everything which happens is connected, that the great and the small things are all encompassed by the same forces of time, by the same law of causes, of coming into being and of dying. This is what shines brightly out of your exalted teachings, O perfected one. But according to your very own teachings, This unity and necessary sequence of all things is nevertheless broken in one place. Through a small gap, this world of unity is invaded by something alien, something new, something which had not been there before, and which could not be demonstrated and cannot be proven. These are your teachings of overcoming the world, your teachings of salvation. But with this small gap, with this small breach, the entire eternal and uniform law of the world is breaking apart again and again and becomes void. Please forgive me for expressing this objection. Quietly, Gotama had listened to him, unmoved. Now he spoke, the perfected one, with his polite and clear voice. You've heard the teachings, O son of a Brahmin, and good for you that you've thought about it thus deeply. You found a gap in it, an error. You should think about this further. But be warned, O seeker of knowledge, of the thicket of opinions and of arguing about words. There is nothing to opinions. They may be beautiful or ugly, smart or foolish. Everyone can support them or discard them. But the teachings you've heard from me are no opinion, and their goal is not to explain the world to those who seek knowledge. They have a different goal. Their goal is salvation from suffering. This is what I teach, nothing else. I wish that you, O exalted one, would not be angry with me, said the young man. I have not spoken to you like this to argue with you, to argue about words. You are truly right. There is little to opinions, but let me say this one more thing. Your insight has come to you in the course of your own search, on your own path, through thoughts, through meditation, through realizations, and through enlightenment. It has not come to you by means of teachings. And, thus is my thought, O exalted one, no one will obtain salvation by means of teachings. You will not be able to convey and say to anyone, O venerable one, in words and through teachings, what has happened to you in the hour of enlightenment. The teachings of the enlightened Buddha contain much. It teaches many to live righteously, to avoid evil. But there is one thing which these so venerable teachings do not contain. They do not contain the mystery of what the Exalted One has experienced for himself. This is what I have thought and realized when I have heard these teachings. This is why I am continuing my travels, not to seek other, better teachings, for I know there are none, but to depart from all teachings and all teachers, and to reach my goal by myself, or to die. The Buddha's eyes quietly looked to the ground. Quietly, in perfect equanimity, his inscrutable face was smiling. I wish, the Venerable One spoke slowly, that your thoughts shall not be in error, that you shall reach your goal. With half of a smile, with an unwavering openness and kindness, Gotama looked into the stranger's eyes and bid him to leave with a hardly noticeable gesture. You are wise, O Samana, the Venerable One spoke. You know how to talk wisely, my friend. Be aware of too much wisdom. The Buddha turned away, and his glance and half of a smile remained forever etched in Siddhartha's memory. And we're back. What do you think about the predicament that Siddhartha finds himself in? Is it at all similar to your own? He's continuing his journey, and he identifies as a lifelong learner, but he's recognizing that he doesn't always have to learn at the feet of his master. He wants to squeeze the juice of life for himself, and he realizes that application is everything. And this applies to all fields. If you're a scientist and you only read and recreate old experiments, well, that just doesn't work. One day you're going to have to perform your own experiments, create your own questions. It's the same with martial arts. You can't just hear about the glory days from your coach, watch them teach techniques, and watch highlight reels on YouTube. Of course not. In order to make any progress, you need to practice the moves and have your own fights. To quote Bruce Lee, quote, adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own, end quote. So how do we add what is specifically our own? Well, one way is to more closely investigate and trust in our personal experience. In fact, more closely investigating and trusting our personal experience actually makes the periods of time we learn from others even more rich and fruitful, because now we have something to compare it to. So the question becomes, how do we better learn from our experience? We want to optimize this learning process, and one way to do that is to become more observant. Imagine for a moment that every part of your experience, everything you see, everything you feel and hear and smell, is light coming through a semi-closed door. We begin to open that door by making a mental note of what we see with our eyes, what we hear in our environment, and getting in touch with the tactile sensations that flow through our hands and feet and back in pulses of electricity. Sure enough, the door that was holding back this bright light begins to move ajar, and more light fills our awareness. So taking a moment and asking yourself, what is your experience like right now? Are there any sensations of pressure or contact? Do your ears pick up anything that might have been there the whole time, but had, until now, fallen into the background? Just noticing, observing, really growing your circle of curiosity, investigating what is happening in your personal experience in this moment. And when you feel ready, drawing in a nice soft breath and letting it go. Have these ideas and questions gotten the wheels turning? I know that they have for me. If you would so please, make sure to let me know what you liked about today's episode and what you want to hear more of. You can do this by writing a review or reaching out to me on Instagram. Before we go, remember, live with presence, confidence, and love.